Welcome to episode 14 of Unscripted Let's Talk. This is Mary Eggleston, and I am here today with Jon Feiock from the VA, who's going to talk to us about veterans and their needs and what we can do as a community to support them and some of the systemic things that we need to address so that we can reach them. So, hello, Jon.
Hello, Mary.
So tell us a little bit about what you do, and what you're hoping to make a difference with.
Sure, yeah. Thank you very much. Glad to be here, and thank you for your attention to this important topic and the space to talk about it. So my name's Jon Feiock. I'm a social worker by background, and I've been proudly able to work at the VA for the last little over 10 years. Started off in a homeless outreach role, working with our homeless vets, trying to get them off the streets, connected to housing, employment services. After that, transitioned into an outpatient mental health therapy role for about 6 or 7 years. And then for the last 2 years, I've been part of the Office of Mental Health and Suicide Prevention's public health approach towards suicide prevention amongst our veterans.
And what exactly does that mean, suicide preventions? And how does that translate into what you actually do or what you're hoping that we'll do?
Yeah. So just a little background. So every VA medical center has a suicide prevention team. So say here in South Dakota, we have a team out of the Sioux Falls VA, and there's also a suicide prevention team from the Black Hills VA that covers the western part of the state. So both of the medical centers, we have a prevention team. Historically, the suicide prevention teams, not just here in the great state of South Dakota, but across the nation, have focused most of their efforts more on those veterans coming into the walls of the VA to get services, whether it's mental health, primary care, veterans benefits, just whatever it may be. But what the folks with the VA central office have realized that a lot of our veterans that are eligible for VA care are not being seen actually at the VAs.
Yeah, they're not finding their way to the VA.
Right. Yeah. Some either they're getting care, at non-VA hospitals or clinics. They're not getting care at all. But maybe they're active members in their community. Kind of going to church or showing up at their job 5-6 days a week, but maybe not coming to the VA for their health care. And so, but our suicide prevention efforts aren't just focused on those veterans coming into the VA for services. Right. We really, want to support any and all veterans that have proudly served the country. So it's more of our community-based efforts, this public health approach towards really trying to increase the awareness, the spread, just kind of the interaction we can have with our veterans and service members.
So you coming on the podcast is all part of reaching out. So people listening will know of the services that you offer at the VA and helping veterans to find their way to inside the walls of the VA if they need that. Because, there are so many, as Jon and I were talking before the podcast, and I was saying that as a therapist, I'm well aware that people have gone through many, many things before they, in terms of emotionally dealing with that they need help, before they ever come take a seat in my office. And so I'm not a frontline person,
right.
And what you're talking about is you want to reach to the people who are on the front line, the ministers, the employers, the family members, the friends who can see that a veteran is struggling, that they're isolating, and then how to reach them. So what are your thoughts on that, Jon?
Yeah, so one way I think about prevention, I think about it in two different categories. We've got the crisis management. Somebody's in acute crisis, struggling with thoughts of suicide. We need to get that person safe. We need to get that person connected to, maybe into the hospital to be assessed and evaluated, friends and family to be with that person in that time of need. So that crisis management. But also there's those upstream efforts, the real prevention. We had one of our previous leaders, Keita Franklin, talked about the left of the boom. So really trying to those preventative. If a crisis for somebody is everything kind of hitting the fan at once, loss of job, maybe relationships. We want to try to get somebody connected to employment or
Before
housing
that happens.
before that crisis. So the real prevention is those things prior to. And so if we can equip, like with our community-based efforts, again, for those veterans not being seen at the walls of the VA. And I make it known when I go out into the public and talk with folks in the community, different healthcare organizations. We're not here as a recruitment effort. We're not trying to steal all our veterans back and have them seen at the VA. That's not that's not our focus. Certainly, if folks have those benefits, we believe people, it's helpful for people to be
why
aware
not
of those
use them?
benefits and
Right.
they fought proudly for those. So if they're eligible, we want to get them connected to those. But if they're not, again, we still want to equip those communities. So whether it's folks at the church, grocery stores, bars, casinos, just as many places as I use the term touch points a lot.
Okay.
If we can get connected to those touch points in the communities that may have that interaction with that veteran or service member, we're equipping those touch points with knowledge and education and awareness so that if they come across that veteran or service member struggling or family member that's looking for resources, that they know at least a little bit to help guide that person, to potential services.
So how does somebody win over a veteran? I mean, how would you? How do you do that?
Like establish that rapport.
Yeah,
with
enough
the
that you
veteran?
would say that, hey, let me get you somewhere where you can get some help, or let me give you some ideas, because you can't just blurt that out to somebody.
Yeah, definitely, relationships, rapport, kind of that trust, I think is big for a lot of people. I think especially with our veterans and service members, that camaraderie, that, that rallying kind of,
Yeah,
certainly.
many of the veterans that I've talked to have said they only trust other veterans.
Sure,
And they struggle to really trust anybody else. They don't want to talk about what they've experienced with anyone but another veteran.
Right.
And so somebody seeing a veteran struggling, they probably need some ideas of, okay, so how do you create this? And you had said you had a story about Eeyore.
Oh, yes. My counterpart that works out in the Black Hills, Mark Urban, we had the opportunity of presenting at a state conference for social work not too long ago, and he started off with the story, and since then I've stolen it, borrowed it from him, but yeah, it's the story of, think back, the story of Eeyore and Pooh and Piglet and Christopher Robin, and I think we remember Eeyore as that, that kind of
A little bit
down and out,
depressed, just kind
and
of down,
glum,
yeah, having a hard day.
and so it occurred to Pooh and Piglet one day that they hadn't heard from Eeyore in several days, and so they decided to take the trek, across this, wooded area to get to Eeyore's house, and they see Eeyore, there, and Eeyore in his glum sounding voice is like, "Oh, hey, what are you guys doing here?" And Piglet and Pooh just said, "Well, it occurred to us that we hadn't heard from you in a couple of days, and so we wanted to reach out, come by, check in to see how you're doing." And Eeyore's like, "Well, tell you the truth, are any of us really okay? To be honest, I've been really sad, and I haven't wanted to bother or burden you guys, because who's gonna want to hang out with somebody who's not very much fun. So I just, Eeyore says, I just kind of left you guys alone." And Piglet and Pooh kind of look at each other, and they proceed to just sit down, with Eeyore, and in that moment, didn't really necessarily even say much, Piglet and Pooh, but just Eeyore comments that, just kind of surprisingly, he starts feeling better, and just because, the presence of Pooh and Piglet, in that moment, nothing said,
Right.
but just the simplicity of presence and kind of recognition that, that their friend was struggling was enough for Eeyore in that time to start to feel better.
Yeah.
And I love that story, just because within our suicide prevention efforts, a strong statement we have is that suicide prevention is everybody's business.
That's right.
And that it's, like say in this case with Pooh and Piglet, do they think they were doing suicide prevention? If we put it into that term, I mean, I don't know if they would say that was what they did, but they recognized the friend was struggling. They took some steps to be with him in that moment, and Eeyore starts feeling better. And it sounds simple, but there's such power in simplicity.
Yeah, it's huge.
And
it's actually,
you don't have to be a subject matter expert. You don't have to know like all the answers to this, the questions.
You just have to
that
actually
led up.
care
Show genuine support and caringness
for another human being.
Yeah, and like kind of going back to like how do you connect with like veterans? That genuine support goes a long way. Because I'm not a veteran. I didn't serve myself. But prior to this, I did work as an individual therapist at the VA. And realizing that not having that prior service, what may impact how I can connect with the veteran, and was very straightforward and said I didn't serve, thank you for your service, but my role is to kind of listen to your story and kind of see what are the major themes, like what's going on and how can I help you in that helping role. So
Yeah, I'm thinking of a young therapist that I was talking to a while back. And he said, Mary, this guy came in, he's come in twice now, and he's talking and talking and talking and talking. He said, I'm not actually saying anything. And at the end of like the second session, he looked at this young therapist and said, thank you so much. You've helped me so much. And he said, I don't know what I'm doing. I've got to figure out what to do. And I said to him, no, you're doing it. It's your presence. And this young man has something you can't teach someone in school. He has that ability to simply be with another human being and care and truly listens. And I said, you're giving this person just this amazing gift. Someone who is actually there with him. And I had mentioned this to you too, John, that I finished the book Tribe not long ago by, Sebastian Junger. Junger, however you say his name. Junger. It's a great book. And he talks about the need for community, the need to feel connected, the need to be making a contribution, and how all of Western society, our civilization, is geared towards isolating, everybody isolating. Now you can do this all by yourself, and you can have your own workout stuff in your house. You don't ever have to leave your house. You can be disconnected from everybody. And you think about a veteran who has been... independence. And he lays out his thoughts just brilliantly in this book about how we need community. We need to feel like we have a purpose.
Right.
And so I think about the veteran coming back who has had tremendous purpose, has moved with tremendous passion, and felt part of. And now they come back, and who am I, and what am I supposed to do here?
Right.
And that's the fallout, the potential fallout of that is enormous.
One of the, a couple weeks ago, one of the community efforts that we do a couple times a year is work with the Sioux Falls Police Department. They have crisis intervention training for new officers, highway patrol, jail staff. And there's part of the presentation talks about the number of individuals that served, during periods of war. So like World War II, I want to say it was like 30% or 36% of the population, males aged, served, and how now in our present, the global war on terror, such a small number of folks that have that have served. And so we think about like, those 36%, there's a lot of camaraderie, there's a kind of
Right.
a lot of shared experience
They
in a
come
way.
back to a feeling of community because there's so many.
Right. And how like today's, service members or veterans, there's not as many. And the folks in the reserves are serving more, but then when they come back, or the National Guard, and they may be coming from all different parts, of the state. And so, staying connected, after that time of service, is not as strong. But
Yeah,
definitely connections is
And a
huge.
feeling of purpose.
Yeah.
And the camaraderie, community.
Yeah, I think about,
Wow.
those, what led somebody to get involved, in the military to begin with. And I, believe there is that strong sense of commitment and, service to the country, and, for folks
And wanting
that
to
are
be part of something,
part
wanting
of
to
something
feel
bigger
like,
than themselves, contribution. Yes, absolutely. And then like that can be part of the struggle, like with transition, transitioning out of the service. Maybe it could be like a medical discharge, so somebody's identity kind of depends for the individual, like, is the military a large part of their identity, and so transitioning away from that, now what fills that space of their identity, if it used to be military, an active, component of service, how can they still fulfill that need to, I think, provide service or, commitment
and I think about the last thing we want to do is to be saying to someone, well, there's something wrong with you. And look, they don't want to be reclassified from a soldier to a victim. Well, now you're mentally ill,
right.
or we have to fix you. I mean, so that's like the worst thing we
Right.
can do.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about the other people besides people like me, to listen to a veteran, it becomes really crucial. Although I'll tell you that my view of anybody who comes into my office is that it's a show of strength. And that's anyone I work with.
Absolutely.
Because what are you pursuing? Well, self-awareness and consciousness.
Yeah.
And the world needs more of that, not less. And it actually takes a level of courage to come in and dare to really look at yourself and why you do what you do. I'm always amazed if I meet people who say, I don't want to know why I do what I do. I just do it. I'm just gonna. I think, really, that's weird. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, therapy to me has always been something that I think everybody could benefit from. Just that self-exploration kind of. I mean, I know I even catch myself. We have tons of thoughts. Every single day. Some more helpful than others, but if we just kind of stay stuck in our own head like that without really kind of like vocalizing some of those, I think then that's. Yeah, it kind of adds to that, like that isolation, and nobody will understand and nobody gets it. So I'll just keep this kind of mess to myself.
Well, we get stuck on a track in our own mind, and it is actually in my work with a neuropsychologist and a neurologist many years ago, I found out that through meditation and the other work that I've done, I've physically rewired my brain. And so it's actually a physical track that you can get stuck on. And you had told a good story about a guy on the Golden Gate Bridge before we began, about that track being interrupted. Would you tell that again?
Sure, yeah. Kevin Hines, is an individual that jumped from the Golden Gate Bridge and survived. I mean, his story is very unique. I mean, the number of folks that jump and don't survive. Yeah.
Right.
Definitely a lot less that survive from the attack or from the jump. But Mr. Hines tells his story is he was. He had been struggling for a number of years with, I think it was bipolar depression, but found himself in this, in this suicidal, crisis. Went out to the Golden Gate Bridge, and part of his story is that he was just desperate. He was wanting somebody to recognize his pain, his distress, come to him and just talk with him. He was so desperate just for somebody to talk to him, kind of recognize this. Mm-hmm. So.
And when you're in a place like that, you don't know how to go and find someone to talk to.
Yeah.
You do need someone to come to you.
Yes. Yeah. It can.
Yeah. Your world just narrows
down so acutely. And so he was standing there on the bridge, and somebody did come up to him, but they asked him to take a picture. Right. And so, I don't know if he took the picture or not, but shortly after that, he jumps. And then right when he jumps, his story is there's that immediate, oh no,
what about that?
Regret. And so it's really, it's teaching everybody else, because it's one of our big efforts with our prevention is, certainly we're focused on the veteran and the service member, that's who our target audience is. But suicide is not just something that affects our veteran population. And so that's where it's part of our effort is if we can kind of get this knowledge into the community and these different touch points, but we're also then providing it to, we're strengthening communities that way too. Hopefully protecting the other, there's about 17 veterans a day that die by suicide, mm-hmm. but in the general population, there's about 130 people a day. And so this isn't just that's why the VA is really focused on taking a public health approach, that we really need to equip our communities with knowledge and awareness of resources and, how to have those difficult conversations. Mm-hmm. I get the opportunity of training all our new staff when they come to the VA, and, big part of my lead is, becoming comfortable with the uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. If you see somebody struggling, if I ask about, suicide and they say yes, well, then what? Then what do I do with that? And
that's the strength of self-awareness right there. If I am comfortable within me, I can sit with you, mm-hmm. even if you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And you're talking about suicide. I can stay. I don't have to run away. I don't have to avoid.
Right.
And I think that's part of what I hear with people who really become so depressed is people just start pulling away. And when you ask them, why did you? I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say.
I didn't want to say the wrong thing.
Right. So I don't want to make them commit suicide. And to everyone listening, you will not make another person commit suicide. That is not how it works. Right. And if you let them talk about it, that will not take them to acting on it. It actually will likely take them in another direction as you listen to, wow, you are really struggling. Yeah. You're really sad, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And just tell me whatever you need to tell me and admit your powerlessness.
Yeah. A couple of years ago, we were doing some community training up in Huron, the farm loan officers. There is a lot of veterans that get into farming, and so going to the farm loan officers was one of those touch points, equipping those folks so that they have a customer that's struggling, that they can help, sit with that person or get them, share in that moment of distress or get them connected to resources. And I had one particular farm loan officer come to me during the break, and we had talked about, if you recognize warning signs, asking the question, are you having thoughts of suicide? And she, we had a great, open discussion. She's like, I felt really intrusive. I didn't feel like I should be asking. Just what if he says yes? She's like, but
what am I going to do then?
Yeah. She's like, but I felt I had to ask this question.
So you're saying that, you have actually encouraged people in these circumstances to ask the question, have you had thoughts of suicide?
Absolutely. Yeah. The VA, we have a VA SAVE, gatekeeper training, recognizing signs, asking the question, validating the experience, and then encouraging treatment. It's usually about an hour training.
And who is that offered to, John?
We can offer that to anybody in the community, free of charge. Again, if this is information that we can get into the hands of as many people as possible, then we see that as equipping communities with being those strong suicide prevention individuals. They feel like I relate it similar to like CPR. I'm a social worker. I'm not a medical doctor, but I need to take CPR every couple of years, refresher, so if I encounter a situation that needs my skill set, I can do something until the professionals come in.
Right.
I'm just kind of like helping that person kind of stay alive until the experts come in. Similar to like gatekeeper training, folks, we're not trying to train people to be psychologists and like, subject matter experts, but we want to give some information and some tools to everybody so that anybody can make a difference if they encounter, a veteran service member or anybody. Again, kind of thinking beyond, just our veteran and our military population. Suicide's affecting, about 130 people a day are taking their lives. And then of that, there's about another 135 people per suicide affected. Right. And so then those individuals directly affected are at higher risk themselves.
So what would you say to the husband or wife with someone, with a veteran who is depressed, possibly suicidal? What would you recommend to them?
Definitely start off by just recognizing, having that conversation of, hey, I've noticed X, Y, and Z with you. If that person's depressed, if they're withdrawn more, just any changes, kind of point out what you've noticed. And then, by recognizing the signs, kind of thinking back to like SAVE, asking the question is a natural next question, because a lot of folks, if they do have a lot of risk factors or depressed or going through a lot of stresses, may think about suicide. Right. And so, by asking, are you having thoughts of suicide? And then let's say that person says, no, I'm not suicidal. I mean, thank goodness. But, I always encourage folks, go back to what you recognize. You still recognize that the person was stressed out or struggling or maybe drinking or, using drugs more. Kind of go back to those warning signs and say, what can we do? I want to help you. I love you. I care about you. I don't have all the answers, but what can I do to help you get connected to services that are available?
Right. And a lot of times the way that depression can show itself is with anger and drinking. Yeah. And then that person is in a very different spot. Yeah. Because I'm saying to you, I'm just worried about you. I care about you, and they're getting this huge angry response, and that puts them in a very different position. Yeah. And I've had people. What I would say to that person is, you need to go in and talk to someone like me. Yeah. And I'm going to walk you through what your options are to find ways to reach that person. But what would you say, John?
I think that's a great step. Mary, another, thinking about it from the VA, side of our resources, we have a program called Coaching into Care. Oh. And so it's for those caretakers or caregivers. It's a family member if they have a veteran that has been reluctant to engage in VA healthcare, for whatever reason, but the family members are seeing the potential benefit of getting engaged. It's coaching into care. It's a VA program. They can reach out, Google it. There's a phone number. But they can get connected to this program that can help the family members, how to best kind of get that veteran engaged in care. Right. So another great option is the Veterans Crisis Line. That's a crisis line.
And we're going to be giving you all of these phone numbers, and I'm also going to have them posted on this particular episode.
Sure.
Because I want people to be able to access this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Veterans Crisis Line is a great. It's 1-800-273-8255. And press 1 to get to the Veterans Crisis Line.
Say that again, John.
Yeah, it's 888-273-8255.
Now, that would be for the Veterans Crisis Line.
That number that I just said is actually the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline.
Oh.
Just that number. And if anybody calls that number in the state of South Dakota, they all get answered by the Helpline Center here in Sioux Falls. Now, if it's somebody that is calling, that's either a veteran, service member, family member of a veteran, neighbor, coworker, if somebody is wanting to call that in support of a veteran, they can call that same 800 number and then press 1, and then that's where it gets specifically routed to the Veterans Crisis Line.
Okay.
And then there's 3 distribution centers in the United States that have trained responders, some of them veterans themselves. Those responders are equipped, skilled to, somebody may just be calling in because they need somebody to talk to.
Right.
They just had a crappy day and needing somebody to talk to. Those responders will take the time to, they'll quickly assess to see if there's, if someone's done something to harm themselves, what's the level of risk. Let's say if that person's like, no, I haven't done anything, I need somebody to talk to. Those responders are going to take the time. We've had some responses, some calls up, a couple hours. And so those responders will definitely take the time, kind of see what's going on. It may be somebody that's trying to get connected to their medical doctor because they ran out of medications and now they've been struggling, so they're getting more depressed. So it's, okay, we're going to try to get them connected to their medical doctor. Let's try to get them an appointment scheduled up.
Okay. And what did you say about the for family members about coaching in care?
Coaching into care. Yep. Let's see. I would have to get that number. I don't have that off the top of my head, but maybe at the end of
We'll post it.
Yes.
When we post this, I'm going to have that posted with the episode.
Yep.
So what we're talking about is really going after this systemically. And the idea of taking a step into what's going on for a veteran or for their family members, instead of pulling away because we're too afraid to say the wrong thing. And what you're encouraging people to do is to open to listening, and not jumping to, you need help, but actually taking a breath, sitting down, and simply listening to what the person has to say.
Yeah.
Because who would want to be labeled pathologically?
Right. Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah,
Nobody
I
wants
would.
that.
I
So
would, yeah.
it's not about, you need to you got to get this person to go in and get help and get diagnosed or whatever it would be.
Right.
It's about taking a moment to listen and actually connecting. And then, I'm thinking as a community, as a society, really recognizing that people need to feel part of making a contribution, having a purpose. But I know a lot of people who they would find great meaning in knowing that really that's all I need to do. It's not as simple as just mumbling something like, oh, thank you for your service, but actually saying, wow, tell me about that.
Yeah.
I'd love to know.
Tell me about your service.
What
did you do? Yeah.
I would really like to know.
Yeah.
I'm really interested, which is the biggest thing when I sit with a veteran. I give that indication and it's real. I really would like to know.
Yeah.
And I actually don't think in terms of pathology. Just
Yeah.
I don't think like that. And I might have to write a note that says some goofy stuff because you have to.
Right.
But when I'm sitting with another human being who's had experiences, and it's really important for us to say that if you've been traumatized in whatever way, and in this case from war, the reactions you're having are normal reactions to trauma.
Yes. Yeah.
It's not like, what's wrong with you? I go to that Oprah Winfrey question that she put out there a few years ago, where she said we have to stop asking people, what's wrong with you? And say, hey, what happened to you?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
I mean, to have a reaction of nervousness or anxiety or worry or any number of things because you've had trauma,
Yeah.
that's normal.
Right. Yeah, I think a great way, to think of it is it's a normal reaction to an abnormal situation.
Right.
I mean, just the development of post-traumatic stress disorder or just these acute stressors. I mean, they're going to shake up our coping skills.
Yeah.
Like it was on another call last week with some community members up in Watertown, and one of the doctors was saying, if patients aren't coming in saying I'm stressed out, during this pandemic, he's like, how are you not stressed out?
What do you mean you're not
Yeah,
stressed? Something's yeah.
It's just this. It's almost like it's normal at this point.
It is.
And so, yeah, especially with like any kind of like traumatic experience. I mean, of course,
You're supposed to have that
your
reaction.
sleep is disrupted. You would be more hypervigilant. So it's normal reactions to those abnormal situations. So yeah, if we can start getting away from what's wrong with you, you're crazy, you're messed up. It's like, well, why wouldn't you be?
Yeah.
Seeing some of the things or experiencing some of these things. And that's just not for veteran service members, but
That's everybody.
law enforcement. Again, this is where when we start getting into our community work, we're talking with first responders and EMT, and I mean, these folks are at risk too because of the
Yes,
nature of
they
their
are.
work. So
That's right. And
Yeah.
the things they see and the things they experience.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and especially I think with, sometimes it can be like post-traumatic stress gets kind of exclusively connected to veterans. But it's not
No,
just with
it's
our
not.
veteran and service member
It's not.
population. So just, kind of understanding and, understanding certainly is going to help reduce some of the stigma, surrounding mental health.
This has been really great. I've just enjoyed this interview. Sometimes I wish we were on video because you would just really love Jon. He's just really fun to watch. He's very expressive as he talks. So last thoughts, Jon.
Sure.
Last things that you just want to make sure that we said.
One thing I would like to talk about with prevention is surrounds like lethal means safety. And the reasons somebody may take his or her life or be in a not very good position can be complicated. Like could be housing, it could be employment, it could be relationship changes. There can be a lot of different things that place somebody at risk for suicide. So trying to predict or understand that is complicated. But we also, with prevention, we look at the means by which somebody takes his or her own life. And very strongly, especially with our military population, firearms, are the leading cause. Almost 70%, 70.
That's big.
And so as you can also kind of, probably imagine then having discussions with veterans about safety with firearms. This is a population very skilled, obviously, in firearms. And we're talking about a Second Amendment right. And so it can be a very polarizing, when we're talking about lethal means safety. But the big part that we emphasize is that safety part. That it's, again, similar to like if someone's had too much to drink. We're not saying we need to take that car away forever. You can never drive that car again. It's, hey, tonight you're not doing very well. I want you to get home. So let's get you in a lift. Let's get you a taxi. Let's somehow get you safely home.
Right.
So like with lethal means safety, safe storage of firearms is generally good practice across the board, not just if someone's in a crisis type of situation.
Right.
But if someone's in a situation where they're not doing really well mentally and they have like a firearm in their household that's loaded, unlocked, that's we think about like the Kevin Hines, those
Right.
impulsive decisions happen really quickly. You can't unfire that firearm.
Right.
So we're not here to say we need to take guns away, from folks, but we really need to focus on the safety aspect. Safe storage of firearms, using a safe, using a cable lock, separating the ammunition from the firearm. The pandemic, there's a lot of kids at home, kind of snooping through stuff.
Right.
So it's So yeah, I just wanted to take a little bit of time and really talking about, again, like lethal means safety. That this isn't a political conversation, but it's more about just recognizing the high level of firearms used in suicides, and that we need to talk about lethal means safety. Any type of prevention efforts. So
Yeah.
in the VA, we have free gun locks that would love to get out to anybody that could use them. Yeah,
Okay.
we've got them on our shelf, and I know when I do community outreach events, if someone can take one and make some use of it, it does a lot better than sitting on my shelf somewhere.
Oh, that's excellent to know. You have free gun locks that people can.
Yep, we have gun
Yeah.
locks that we they have like the Veterans Crisis Line on there. The number, again, the Veterans Crisis Line, that number, there's a texting option as well,
Yeah.
as well as a confidential
So
chat.
simply underlining that for everyone's awareness is to take the safety precautions you need to.
Yeah.
And I really like how you threw in that with the pandemic, kids are home
Kids
and
are
they're
home.
snooping around. Kids really do snoop around
do.
quite a bit.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so do not take any chances.
Yeah, any presentation, I'm talking to folks and saying, you may be okay. You may be like your mental health is solid, you're feeling good. But think about the people to the left, to the right, surrounding you, that living in your household, and also trying to think of what you can do to improve their safety as well. And that's, safe storage of firearms or unused medications. That's another part of lethal means safety. Throwing or, properly disposing of expired, unused medications like that. So,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah.
Thank you for. Oh, I'm so glad I said last thoughts. 'Cause that's excellent.
There's always some
There's
things that I
always
think
some
about
more
after,
things.
like, I missed out on something.
Yeah.
So I'm
Oh,
sure there'll be something
that
else.
was-
So we may have to do this again.
We
at
may
some
have
point,
to, and
Mary.
I would love it.
Same here. Same here.
So, thank you so much.
No, thank you. Thank you.
And thank you to everybody who is listening. And as always, remember to live your life with intention, purpose, and passion. Until next time.